The rand seems to be holding its own when it comes to the greenback, but we are seeing weakness against the pound and the euro as well. No surprise there, given the fact that the dollar is fundamentally weak over the last couple of days.
Dollar is fundamentally weak over the last couple of days. We've also seen a little bit of weakness against other currencies like the Aussie. I mean, the rand has weakened against that. We would assume at this point in time, below 685, below the 7 level, that central bank involvement would be there. The central bank would be involved below those levels, as they have been in the past. So, could be a possibility of upholding the rand at these levels. But, you know, with the rand at these levels, and inflation where it is, and oil prices and commodities on the increase, a stronger rand is not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to
So you're saying we
inflation.
could see a sort of a fundamental shift in the SARB's thinking?
I would hate to speak on the SARB's behalf. Unfortunately, I think with the increase in commodity prices and the increase in the oil, strengthening rand does help the central bank in terms of combating inflation.
Well, with regards to that inflation number, we came in at 4.1%. It's the highest level that we've seen in around 9 months. In terms of what we could be seeing on the interest rate front and what the FRA market is pricing in as well, what kind of scenario could be playing out here? Because we expected the number to come in at 4%, but slightly higher than that number. So it could change the dynamics and the thinking on the desks.
It clearly can change the dynamics and the thinking of what the central bank is looking at. So, I mean, then we start talking about a timing issue. And that is whether it's maybe September or a November issue. The fact of the matter is, inflation is on the uptick, and the trend is upwards. So therefore, the central bank are going to look at inflation expectations and try and manage inflation expectations going forward. And if those inflation expectations go out of the band of 3 to 6%, the central bank are going to react on that. And whether that is September or November is debatable.
It's so fascinating because we've also seen an increase in portfolio flows into the country at a time where we did see a little bit of a retracement at the beginning of the year. Given the fact that some foreign investors could be saying, well, you know, we should be pricing in an interest rate hike, does that make South Africa even more attractive on the yield play?
Well, we've seen that global trend in the rest of the world, where we've seen that in the euro, where the euro has moved substantially stronger against the dollar, anticipating higher rates on the back of higher inflation. I don't see why South Africa would be any different in that scenario. Given that South Africa already have high yields and makes it a very attractive carry trade, that scenario is not going to change anytime soon.
Well, speaking of the carry trade, it seems that it's back in full force. Do you think that we could see an unwinding of this going forward? What would trigger an unwinding of that?
I don't think we're going to see an unwind of the carry trade anytime soon. The growth path of emerging markets is clearly being defined. A lot of international investors are pretty bullish on emerging market growth trends, and therefore South Africa falls into that emerging market growth trend. And with the BRICS summit that's just taken place and the amount of investment that they're talking about taking place into EM, it's going to be very difficult for that carry trade to unwind at this point in time.
Mark, you mentioned commodity-linked currencies with direct reference to the likes of the Australian dollar, and we know that that has been doing quite well. What kind of perhaps movement could we see on the local currency relative to the Australian dollar? Do you think that it's very linked to the commodity market right now? And I allude to gold, which is obviously clearly hitting new all-time highs all the time.
I mean, South Africa is clearly linked to the commodity boom that is taking place and the commodity prices that are increasing. However, Australia have a lot better employment dynamic than what we have. They have a lot better fundamentals compared to what we have in terms of unemployment and productivity from that perspective. However, South Africa is not going to be left alone, just given that we're a massive commodity player in the market. So, relatively speaking, we may underperform the Australian dollar, but our trend is still going to be to a strengthening bias.
For those looking for that point where we will see the rand weakening, what is that turning point going to be, where we can expect the dollar rand to breach that 7 rand level?
Well, I think that's more than just a South Africa specific basically comment or outlook. That's going to be a basically risk on, risk off trade. And that risk off trade is going to take place when there's maybe a major debt crisis that actually takes place, or there's a major default that takes place. And there's a lot of things that are up in the air at the moment. You've got Europe, you've got Greece, Portugal with debt problems, you've got Ireland with the debt problems. So until something major catastrophic happens in the market.
In other words, we'll have a strong currency until something catastrophic happens.
So
is that what you're saying?
until that happens, the carry trade is going to continue. Investors are going to look for yield return. South Africa is well positioned for that.
In terms of the local currency levels that we can expect next week, we've got, of course, holidays on the go as well from tomorrow.
Look, holidays are always a difficult thing, and I don't know about you, but I'm going away, going down to see the family down. So hi, Pat and Barry. So we're going to go and see them, and I think a lot of people have taken some risk off their books, which is prudent given the holidays, the liquidity that could take place. The trend continues to be Rand positive, EM positive.